The cold silence of space filled the black sky above Earth. From the outside, everything looked peaceful. The stars were still, distant lights glowing like tiny fires in the dark. But on Earth, deep under the mountains of New Geneva, there was tension in the air. Inside the Central Union Security Command, the leaders of Earth sat in a private room. No reporters, no cameras, only shadows, hard faces, and tight lips. James Carter stood in front of them. He wore the black uniform of the Space Recon Unit. His face was sharp, his jaw tense. He had been on missions before, but never like this. He knew something was different the moment he received the silent order. No mission briefing on paper. No open records. Only a personal call from Director Hale, the man in charge of Earth's defense. "Do you understand why you are here, Agent Carter?" Director Hale asked. His voice was calm, but there was something cold beneath it. James nodded. "Yes, sir. You need me to lead a team into Varnock space." The room fell quiet for a moment. Hale stood up, walked to a large screen, and pressed a button. A map of the Xyron galaxy appeared, showing Earth's position and the Varnock Empire's territory far across the stars. 2 weeks ago, Hale began, we intercepted a broken signal from Varnock space. It mentioned Earth. It mentioned invasion. He paused, then turned to face James again. "We don't know if it's real or a trap. We can't trust what we hear. We need to see it with our own eyes." James stood straight. "And you believe my team can get that proof?" "You've done it before, Carter. You can do it again. But this time, the risk is higher." Hale's eyes narrowed. "The public doesn't know about this. They must never know unless we confirm a threat. You will take 5 agents. You will enter Varnock territory. You will find out if they plan to attack Earth. And you will come back alive." James knew the dangers. The Varnock Empire was known for its power. Their soldiers were brutal. Their technology was strong. No one had ever entered their capital and lived to tell about it. But James couldn't say no. Earth was his home. His duty was clear. "When do we leave?" James asked. "Tonight." The meeting ended. James left the room and walked down the dark hallway. His mind was sharp, but his heart felt heavy. He thought about his team, 5 of the best agents Earth had. Lena Rhodes, his second-in-command, smart and brave. Marcus Lee, the tech expert. Sophie Tran, the pilot. David and Eric, the muscle of the team. He found them waiting in the hangar, standing by their ship, the Shadow Wing. The ship was small, built for stealth. It had no bright lights, no large weapons, only dark metal plates to hide it from enemy radars. James gathered his team and gave them the news. None of them spoke a word of doubt. They knew the risks. They knew the cost. But they trusted James. And they trusted each other. Hours later, the Shadow Wing lifted off from Earth, silent and fast. The stars stretched out before them as they crossed the black sea of space. No one spoke much on the way. Each of them sat alone with their thoughts. James sat in the pilot's chair, looking out the window. He thought about what Hale had said. He thought about the signal. Was it real? Was it a trap? And if it was real, could they really stop what was coming? He didn't know the answer. But one thing was certain. There was no turning back now. The ship entered the jump gate. In a flash of white light, they left Earth far behind. The Shadow Wing moved through the dark emptiness of space. Inside the ship, the crew checked their gear in silence. James Carter stood near the control panel, looking at the flashing red light on the map. It showed their target, Varnock 5, the capital planet of the Varnock Empire. "Approaching Varnock Zone," Sophie, the pilot, announced. James nodded. "Slow down. No lights. No signals." Sophie moved her hands across the controls, cutting the ship's power to minimum. The engines hummed softly, almost silent now. The ship drifted like a shadow toward enemy space. James called the team to the center of the ship. They stood in a small circle, helmets under their arms, ready for what was coming. "This is it," James said quietly. "We go in, find the truth, and get out. Stay sharp. Stay silent. If we're caught, there's no backup. No rescue." Lena, standing next to him, asked the question on everyone's mind. "What if they're already waiting for us?" James paused. He looked each of them in the eye. "Then we do what we came here to do, no matter the cost." The team nodded. No one argued. They had trained for this. Sophie brought the ship lower toward Varnock 5. The planet filled the front window, a huge dark sphere with green clouds swirling in its sky. The lights of the Varnock capital, Zavories, glowed like fireflies on the surface. James leaned forward, scanned for weak points in their defense grid. Marcus, sitting at the tech station, worked quickly. His fingers tapped across the glowing screen. There's a small energy gap on the south side of the capital. It looks like a waste zone. We can slip through there. Sophie adjusted the ship's course. Bringing us in, the shadow wing glided toward the surface, slipping through the gap like a ghost. They dropped lower, flying just above the ground. The city of Zavories stretched out ahead, tall black towers, glowing red streets, and Varnock soldiers everywhere. James spoke into his headset. Masks on, cloaks up. The team pulled black hoods over their heads and pressed their helmets into place. Their suits turned dark, blending with the night. From the ground, they would be invisible to the naked eye. Sophie landed the ship in a deep crater outside the edge of the city. The ground was dry and cracked, with sharp rocks jutting out like broken glass. It was the perfect place to hide. The team gathered at the ship's rear door. James opened it slowly. The cold air rushed in, carrying the strange, sharp scent of the Varnock planet. The city lights flickered in the distance. James turned to his team. We go in pairs. Spread out. Collect any data you can, military plans, fleet movements, anything. Meet back here in 8 hours. He pointed to Lena. You're with me. The others nodded and moved off into the shadows. James and Lena moved through the rocky hills toward the city. They kept low, avoiding patrols. The city walls were high and thick, but they found a gap in the side, a broken pipe leading underground. James slipped inside first, followed by Lena. The pipe was dark and narrow. They crawled for several minutes before they reached an open space. It was an old waste tunnel. The air was heavy and damp. Far above them, they could hear the hum of power lines and the faint sound of Varnock voices. They moved quietly through the tunnel, following the sound. They climbed up through a metal grate and found themselves beneath the city's power station. Thick cables ran along the walls. Huge machines hummed all around them. Lena pointed to a control panel. We could tap into the power grid. Maybe we can find their fleet network. James nodded. Let's do it. Lena moved to the panel and connected a small device from her pack. The screen lit up, showing layers of data. She worked fast, pulling files and transferring them to their system. James stood guard, his hand on his weapon. He watched the shadows, listening for any sound. After a few minutes, Lena looked up. I've got something. Varnock fleet schedules. Possible attack routes. But it's not complete. James frowned. Keep going. We need more. Lena worked faster, her hands shaking slightly. James could feel the pressure building. They were deep inside enemy ground. One wrong move, and they were done. Suddenly, James heard something, a soft click behind him. He turned sharply, raising his weapon. But there was nothing, only silence. His heart pounded in his chest. He scanned the darkness, every muscle tense. Lena's voice broke the silence. I've got all I can. We should go. James nodded. Let's move. They backed out the way they came, slipping through the pipe back into the rocky hills. The city lights burned behind them like a warning. When they reached the ship, Marcus and David were already there. Sophie and Eric arrived minutes later. No one spoke until the ship's door closed. James looked around at his team. Report. Lena spoke first. We pulled fleet data. Possible attack plans. Marcus added, I got a list of Varnock security codes. Might help us move deeper next time. Sophie and Eric had found nothing useful. Just heavy patrols and sealed areas. James nodded. It wasn't much, but was a start. He looked out the small window at the dark city in the distance. They had made it inside, but something didn't feel right. It felt too easy. James knew this was just the beginning. The ship felt colder when they returned. Maybe it was the weight of what they had found. Maybe it was the silence they all carried with them. No one joked. No one smiled. James sat by the control screen, going over the data Lena had pulled. The information looked real. Too real. Varnock war fleets. Supply routes. Attack plans aimed at Earth's nearby defense stations. It was clear now. The Varnock were preparing for something big. James turned to his team. They sat around the table in the center of the ship, their faces tense. "We need more," James said. "We have proof they're building fleets, but we need to know when they'll move. We need locations of their command ships, their leaders. Without that, this isn't enough." Lena leaned forward. "There's a communication hub deeper inside the city. It looks like a main relay point. If we can tap it, we might get full orders." Marcus nodded. "It's risky. The place will be crawling with guards." James looked at each of them. "We don't have a choice." He pulled up a map of the city on the screen. He pointed to the hub, marked in red, deep in the center of Zavoris. "We'll move in pairs again. Marcus and Sophie, you check the east sector. Look for any signs of fleet movement. Eric and David, watch the western gate for troop transports or cargo ships. Lena and I will go for the hub." Everyone nodded. No one questioned the plan. They suited up again, pulling on their dark cloaks and helmets. The ship door opened with a soft hiss. One by one, the team slipped into the night. James and Lena moved first, keeping low as they crossed the rocky hills again. The city lights flickered like distant fire. James could feel the weight in his chest growing heavier with every step. Something felt wrong. The night air felt too still, like the city itself was holding its breath. They reached the edge of the city. James checked his wrist screen. The hub was less than 2 miles ahead. They moved quickly, using back alleys and empty loading docks to stay hidden. Suddenly, James heard a soft buzz in his earpiece. It was Marcus. "We've reached the east sector. No sign of ships yet." James pressed his finger to his earpiece. "Keep moving. Stay low." Minutes passed. James and Lena reached the outer wall of the communication hub. They climbed onto a storage container, slipping through a broken vent. Inside, the building was filled with rows of glowing servers and tall towers of cables. Lena moved to the nearest terminal and plugged in her device. The data started to flow. James stood watch again, scanning the dark corners of the room. Then, the buzz in his ear returned. This time it was Sophie. "James, we've got a problem." James tensed. "What is it?" There was silence for a moment. Then Sophie's voice came back, shaky. "We lost contact with Marcus. He went around a corner and didn't come back. I waited, but he's gone." James' stomach tightened. He pressed his earpiece again. "Eric, David, check the west gate. See if they're still moving." But no one answered. James tried again. "Eric? David? Do you copy?" Still nothing. Lena looked up from the terminal, her face pale under the dim lights. "We're being hunted," she whispered. James knew she was right. It wasn't a guess. It was fact. The Varnock knew they were here. "Pull what you can," James ordered. "We're leaving now." Lena nodded, working faster. James backed toward the door, watching every shadow. Then a noise, a soft hiss of steam. James spun around, his heart pounding. Figures moved in the dark, tall shapes, armored, carrying weapons. "Lena, move!" James shouted. Lena yanked the device from the terminal and ran toward him. The Varnock soldiers opened fire. Bright red energy blasts shot past them, hitting the walls. James grabbed Lena's arm and pulled her through the vent. They slid down the container and hit the ground hard. "Go! Back to the ship!" James yelled. They ran through the alleys, boots slamming on the ground. The soldiers chased after them, shouting in their strange language. James and Lena turned a corner, diving into a broken tunnel. They didn't stop. They couldn't stop. As they neared the hills, James tried his earpiece again. "Sophie? Eric? David? Answer me." But there was nothing. Only static. They reached the crater where the ship was hidden. The door was already open. Sophie stood there, alone, her face white with fear. "Where are the others?" James asked, breathless. Sophie shook her head. "I waited. I called them. They didn't answer. I think they're gone." James clenched his fists. His team gone just like that. Lena stepped onto the ship, handing James the device. "We got the data, but they know we're here now." James stared at the dark city in the distance. His mind raced. 4 agents gone. Only 3 left. And the enemy closing in. They had one more chance. One more shot to find the truth before they were all wiped out. James turned to Sophie and Lena. His voice was low but firm. "This isn't over." The ship was too quiet now. The empty seats were a painful reminder. Marcus, Eric, and David were gone. Taken or killed. James didn't know which, and that made it worse. The remaining team, just him, Lena, and Sophie, sat in silence. James studied the data Lena had stolen from the hub. Red lines, strange symbols, ship names, and unknown codes filled the screen. None of it made sense, not fully. It looked like part of a much bigger plan. But one thing stood out. A file marked Project Iron Signal. Lena leaned over his shoulder. It looks like a data link connected to Earth's defense network. James narrowed his eyes. Ow! Lena worked the keys, pulling up more layers. Finally, she found a line of human language hidden in the alien code. A single message. Test connection. Earth command. Signal strength stable. Sophie gasped. They've already reached Earth's systems? James stood up, running his hands over his face. It's worse than we thought. They aren't just planning an invasion. They've already started getting inside. Lena's face tightened. If they control Earth systems, they could shut down our defenses before the first shot is fired. James knew they had to act fast. They had no time left. There's only one place this kind of link could be controlled from, James said. The Central Core, Varnok's main command center. Sophie looked nervous. That's suicide. We'll never make it out alive. James shook his head. We don't need to make it out. We just need to send one message back to Earth. One warning. Lena nodded. Let's do it. James checked his gear. He felt the weight of the mission settle deep in his chest. He didn't know if this would be their last move, but he knew they couldn't stop now. They left the ship again, moving through the rocky hills. The sky above them was dark, almost too dark. There was no wind, no sound, just the soft crunch of their boots on dry ground. As they neared the city again, James stopped suddenly. Something felt wrong. The streets were empty. No soldiers. No patrols. No noise. It's too quiet, Lena whispered. James motioned for them to stay low. They crept toward the wall of the Central Core, a massive black tower in the center of Zavoris. Its windows glowed with soft red light. Sophie checked the scanners. No movement inside. It's empty. James didn't believe it. It's a trap, but they had come this far. They had no choice now. They moved around to the back of the tower. James found a small door unlocked. Too easy. He pushed it open slowly, and they stepped inside. The air smelled like burnt metal. Long hallways stretched out in front of them, glowing with soft lights. It felt like walking into the mouth of a beast. They reached a large control room. The floor was filled with data towers and screens. In the center stood a large console glowing bright green. Lena hurried to the console, plugging in her device again. She worked fast, searching for the connection to Earth. James stood by the door, weapon ready. Sophie covered the hallway. Minutes passed. Lena's voice broke the silence. I found it. The signal is real. They're deep inside Earth systems. If we shut it down here, they'll lose control. James nodded. Send a warning to Earth first. Anything you can. Lena's fingers moved across the screen. But before she could finish, the lights flickered. Heavy doors slammed shut behind them. From the shadows, Varnok's soldiers stepped out. Dozens of them, weapons raised. And standing in the middle was Commander Zareth, tall and cold, his black armor shining in the red light. James raised his weapon, but Zareth spoke first, his voice deep and sharp. Drop your weapons. You are already finished. James glanced at Lena and Sophie. They were surrounded. No way out. Lena tried to send the signal, but Zareth saw her move. He raised his hand, giving a signal to his soldiers. Sophie turned to James. Run. I'll hold them off. James grabbed her arm. No. But Sophie pulled away, firing her weapon at the soldiers. Energy blasts filled the air. The soldiers charged toward her. James grabbed Lena and pulled her toward a side door. They ran, the sounds of battle echoing behind them. Sophie's screams were the last thing James heard before the door slammed shut. They ran down a long tunnel. James knew they had minutes, maybe seconds, before the soldiers followed. They found a small maintenance shaft and climbed inside. The tunnel was narrow and dark. James held on to Lena's arm as they crawled through, their breath heavy. Finally, they reached the end, a small hatch leading to the surface. James pushed it open. They climbed out onto a platform high above the city. Below them, the lights of Zavoris burned bright. The tower stood tall behind them like a black blade in the sky. Lena looked at James, fear in her eyes. "We lost everyone." James didn't answer. He stared out at the city, thinking fast. They had one shot left. "There's an old transmission tower on the edge of the city," James said. "If we can reach it, I can send a short message back to Earth." Lena nodded. "Let's go." They disappeared into the night, knowing the Varnock were right behind them. The sky over Zavoris had turned a sickly shade of green. Thick clouds swirled above the towers, covering the city like a dark blanket. No stars could be seen. No moon. Just the glow of red lights scattered across the streets far below. James and Lena kept moving through the shadows. Their boots hit the ground softly. Every step felt heavier than the last. Their team was gone. Only the two of them were left now. They moved toward the edge of the city. In the distance, James could see the old transmission tower standing tall on a rocky cliff. It looked abandoned, like a broken finger pointing toward the sky. The tower was their last hope to send a message back to Earth. James knew time was running out. Zaratha's soldiers would be looking for them. Maybe they already were. "We have to move faster," James whispered. Lena nodded, breathing hard. "I can reroute the signal if I reach the tower controls." James glanced back toward the city. His gut told him the enemy was closing in. They crossed a narrow bridge over a dry riverbed. The ground below was cracked and empty, like something had drained all the life from it long ago. The tower stood just beyond, surrounded by sharp rocks and broken fences. As they reached the base of the tower, James stopped. He scanned the area. No guards. No lights. Too quiet again. "It's never this easy," he whispered to himself. Lena climbed up the metal stairs. James followed close behind, his weapon ready. The tower groaned in the wind, as if warning them to turn back. But they didn't stop. They reached the top. A small control room sat inside a glass dome. Dust covered the floor. Broken screens blinked with weak light. Lena moved quickly, brushing off the dust and powering up the console. The screen flickered, showing a weak connection to Earth's defense relay. "I've got a line," Lena whispered, "but the signal is weak. You'll have to keep the tower powered while I send the message." James nodded. He moved to the side panel and flipped the old power switch. The lights flickered brighter. A low hum filled the tower as the antennas powered up. Lena typed fast, trying to connect to Earth Command. Suddenly, James heard something behind him. A soft thump on the metal stairs. He spun around, weapon raised. Varnock's soldiers were already climbing up the tower. "Lena, they found us!" James shouted. Lena didn't stop. "I just need a few more seconds." The soldiers moved faster, closing in. James aimed and fired. Energy blasts echoed through the tower. The metal walls shook. The glass dome cracked under the pressure. James knew they couldn't hold them off much longer. "Lena, send the message," he yelled. Lena hit the final key. The signal started to send, but it was too long. Too much data. The line was breaking. James turned to her. "Cut the rest. Send a short message. One word. Something they'll understand." Lena nodded, hands shaking. She cleared the message and typed one word. "Inside." She hit send. The console flashed green. The message was sent, but the soldiers had reached the top. James turned just in time to see Lena being grabbed by two armored Varnock soldiers. She struggled, kicking and shouting, but they held her tight. James raised his weapon again, but something hit him from behind, hard. He dropped his weapon and fell to the floor. His vision blurred. The room spun around him. He saw Lena being dragged away. He tried to move, but his body felt heavy. His head hit the cold metal floor. Everything went black. James didn't know how much time had passed. When he opened his eyes, he was alone. The control room was empty. The console was dark. The tower lights were off. The city below was silent. Lena was gone. The soldiers were gone. Only James remained. He pushed himself to his knees, his body shaking with pain. He looked around. There was no one left to fight, no one left to save. But the message had gone through. One word, enough to warn Earth. He crawled to the edge of the tower and looked out over the city of Zavoris. The Varnock Empire still stood strong. But James knew he had done what he came here to do. He didn't know if he would live to see Earth again. He didn't know if anyone would ever find him. But he knew Earth had been warned. Pain. That was all James Carter felt when he opened his eyes again. His head throbbed. His body ached. He could barely move. The cold floor beneath him was wet from broken pipes dripping from the ceiling. The air smelled like oil and smoke. The lights in the tower were gone. The place was dead. He forced himself to sit up, every muscle screaming in protest. For a moment, he didn't remember where he was. Then the memory hit him like a wave. Lena gone. Sophie gone. The others gone. And him, alone. James pressed a shaking hand to his earpiece. Static. No signal. He tried again. Still nothing. His connection to Lena and the rest of the team had been cut for good. He reached for his sidearm, but it wasn't there. The Varnock soldiers had taken his weapon. They had left him alive on purpose. He knew what this was. A warning. Or maybe a game. James slowly stood, holding onto the wall for balance. His vision was still blurry, but he could just make out the cracked console. He moved toward it. His heart raced. He tapped the dead screen. Nothing happened. He slammed his fist on it. Still nothing. The tower had lost all power. He felt panic rising in his chest. Had the message gone through? Did Earth get the warning? Was it too late? James knew he couldn't stay here. The Varnock soldiers might return to finish him off. He had to move, even if it was hopeless. He stumbled down the metal stairs, holding onto the railing. Every step felt like his legs might give out. His breath came in short, sharp gasps. When he reached the ground, the city of Zavoris stretched out in front of him. The streets were still empty. Too empty. The silence felt like a trap. James started moving through the broken fences and rubble. His body hurt, but his mind stayed sharp. He couldn't afford to give up now. He needed proof the message had gone through. He reached into his suit pocket and pulled out his personal tracker, a small device linked to Earth's listening posts. It had one small screen, one light. If Earth received his message, the light would blink green. James stared at the screen. It was dark. No blinking light. No sign the message had been heard. His heart sank. He stood there for a moment, staring at the dead screen. All the missions, all the risks. His team, gone for nothing. He felt anger build inside him. Anger at the Varnock. Anger at himself. Anger at the Union for sending them here with no real way out. He squeezed the tracker tight in his fist. No, he whispered. Not for nothing. James looked up at the sky. He knew there was one more thing he could do. One more place he could go. The Black Spire. It was an old Varnock communication tower outside the city. No one used it anymore. But James remembered it from the maps. Maybe he could get one last signal out. It was a long shot, but it was all he had. James started walking. Step by step. He pushed through the pain, through the fear, through the empty streets. The Black Spire stood on a hill beyond the city, covered in rust and dust. The ground around it was dry and cracked. No patrols. No guards. It was risky, but James had no choice. He climbed the broken stairs to the top. The wind howled around him. The tower creaked and groaned like it was ready to fall apart. He found the old control box, half buried in dust. It looked dead, but James wasn't ready to give up. He opened it and started working with his bare hands. The wires sparked. The small screen flickered. It was alive. James tapped into the old system. He typed one word, the same word Lena had sent before, the word that mattered most. Inside, the signal was weak, but it moved through the system. James watched the screen flash once, then twice, then go dark again. He collapsed to his knees. He didn't know if it worked. He didn't know if anyone heard it, but he had done all he could. He lay on the cold metal floor, staring up at the sky. The wind blew through the broken tower. James closed his eyes. He didn't know what would happen next. He didn't know if Earth was safe or already lost. But he had done his part. That was enough. Deep under the mountains of New Geneva, in Earth's Central Command, the air felt heavy. Officers and scientists stood crowded around the main operations table. Their faces were pale, their voices low. Director Hale sat at the head of the table, staring at the large screen on the wall. The screen showed one simple word in green text. Inside, that was all they had received. No names, no details, no follow-up. Just one word from the mission sent to Varnock Space. James Carter's team had gone dark 2 days ago. Everyone in the room knew what that meant. No contact, no signals, no survivors. The room remained silent until Commander Reyna, the head of Earth's Fleet Command, finally spoke. It could mean the Varnock are inside our defense systems, she said. It could mean they've already broken through. Hale leaned forward. Or it could mean Carter was trapped inside their city, inside their territory. He might have been asking for help. The two commanders exchanged tense looks. General Stein shook his head. We can't afford to guess. If the Varnock have already breached our systems, they could shut down our entire defense network. Our satellites, our ships, our shields. Reyna stood and crossed her arms. If we're wrong, and we move too early, we could start a war we can't win. The room grew colder. Everyone knew the risk. Hale stood, looking around at every face. We don't have full proof, but we can't sit and wait for them to strike first. He pressed a button on the table. A large map of Earth's defense grid appeared on the screen. Double the firewall security on all systems, Hale ordered. Run a full sweep for any foreign signals. Lock every fleet in defense position. He paused, lowering his voice. And prepare for possible war. No one argued. The officers nodded and left the room quickly, their footsteps echoing down the long hallways. Hale stayed behind, staring at the blinking green message one last time. Inside, he whispered the word to himself, wondering what James had really meant. Was it a warning? A final clue? Or something else entirely? Outside the window, Earth's skies looked peaceful, blue and clear. But deep in space, far beyond the stars, Hale knew something had already begun. The war hadn't started with guns or ships. It had started with silence. It had started with shadows. It had started with a single word. And now, Earth had to decide what to do next.